So I'll just go start again. Welcome to the Portsmouth WordPress Meetup on the 19th of July 2023. Today's meeting is about Advanced Custom Fields, ACF, and specifically about Advanced Custom Fields Pro. It's a 101, which means it's a beginner's guide, but I don't think when I talk about anything, it's ever a beginner's guide. I always make plenty of assumptions that you know lots of different things. So if you don't know, please ask me and I'm going to spit this fruit pastel out my gob because it was getting in the way. So, Advanced Custom Fields. Quick show of hands. Who knows about Advanced Custom Fields? Who has used something which deals with custom fields in WordPress but doesn't use Advanced Custom Fields to do it? Me. And did you nod, Drew?
No, I've either used Advanced Custom Fields as a plugin or I've coded something myself. So
right, so that was yes for both of them. Good. Right. Now, do I need to read all these slides out? Advanced Custom Fields turns WordPress sites into a fully fledged content management system by giving you all the tools to do more with your data. Well, all the tools, it gives you lots of tools to create the content, but it doesn't give you that many to display the content unless you're a programmer. But we will come on to that. And Advanced Custom Fields Pro gives you more tools, and it gives you 6 extra things that you don't have in Advanced Custom Fields. Now, these slides are on wppompey.org.uk, and therefore you can view the slides and you can click on any of the links, which you can see are blue underlined or might be slightly purple if I've already clicked on the link myself. Ask questions at any time. So, what is an example of a custom field? Well, each of those things there are custom fields which are displayed on the Meetup post for today's Meetup on WP Pompey. And the first one is a date field, and the second one is a time field, and then there's a URL, and then there's a Google Maps map. And the reason it's centered on Austin, Texas, is that's where WP Engine are based, and WP Engine are now the owners, whatever the word is, for the Advanced Custom Fields plugin on WordPress.org, and the owners of ACF PRO. And below that, we see some more fields. A text field which is storing the address, which includes a postcode, and 2 number fields, latitude and longitude, which is what positions the marker on the map. But a nice simple example of custom fields. Now, shall I admit that none of those are in ACF fields because they're all hand cranked by my own code? Yes, I suppose I should. But my plan is one day I will change and use Advanced Custom Fields instead of my own code. Attention. So ACF fields are bits of information which is stored in places in the website, and Advanced Custom Fields uses the concept of field groups which map to meta boxes inside the editor primarily, and a field group can be associated with a number of different locations, and it has other rules as well. So when you start defining Advanced Custom Fields using the user interface that ACF provides, you will first of all create a new field group, and then you'll add fields inside it. And here we can see screen capture of my demo website where I have a set of ACF fields, some of which are now programmed and others are just part user interface stuff. And you can see I've got 33 fields in the testimonials field group, and that's an instance of each of the different ACF fields that you can have. And we'll come on to those later. ACF functionality is to do with field groups and field types, and the editing of the field content. Recently, they added in the capability for defining custom post types and custom taxonomies. ACF standard provides something called local JSON, which enables you to speed up your site slightly by having JSON copies of the field type and field definitions. You can export and import these definitions between sites to make it easier to do your work quickly. There's the facility of front-end forms, which I haven't touched at all, and some people might have done, but I'm not going to talk about that. And there's other different things which you can find documented on the website. What ACF PRO provides over and above ACF are a special field type called the flexible content field, another one called the repeater field, and both flexible content field and repeater field enable you to define multiple fields, and the repeater field enables you to define the field over and over again, and the flexible content field enables you to put different layouts together in different format inside the block, inside the editor. There's a clone field, which is a field which you can say, well, it's just the same as that one over there. And you can have that editable in two different ways. And they also provide a gallery field as part of the different field types in ACF PRO. The reason I bought ACF a few years back was because I was very interested in blocks, and I wanted to see how ACF developed their code to enable people to create blocks, people who didn't have any knowledge of the JavaScript that's necessary to create a native Gutenberg block. And therefore, I purchased ACF to look at that. And it's taken me 4 years before I actually got round to doing anything. Is there a question to ask? Look out there, Drew.
Yes, Olga asked one. Just was if you stop using the ACF Pro plugin, would you still have that metadata to be able to use somewhere?
Yeah, it won't be deleting the data. There might be some information which won't be that accessible. But yes, you can probably create the content with ACF Pro. Then what will you have to edit the data? I suppose you just have to go back to the straightforward metadata editor. And finally, the sixth thing that ACF provides is an options page where you can define fields of any of the different field types that ACF supports and put it in as sort of global settings. And in fact, the options page feature can be extended to have multiple options pages with different types of options. So the best thing to do is to have a little look at what fields are before we move on to find out what these different advanced fields, flexible content, repeater. So how's over there? Can you see that? Is it too small?
Looks good for me.
Good. Right, so a very simple example. Here's a field group called Field Group 101, and it contains one field. And that field is a text field called text, which has a label of text. And if you were to have that inside your editor, you would be prompted to edit a field that's called text. Can't see that one. Inside a meta box. Now, when you define a field, you have to define what causes, or a field group, what causes it to appear inside your editor and which place. And you use location rules to do this. And this is a very simple. The default definition is that a field group is applicable to post type of post. If you wanted it to appear with pages as well, you might then add a new rule group of all post type is equal to page. And on the left-hand side, that select list there shows all of the different locations to which you can associate your field group. Now, I've not tried associating a field to a particular post status or post format, nor an attachment, comment, or widget. But it is all possible to do this. I have attached them to blocks, and I have attached them to options pages. The next tab on the settings for a field is the presentation, and as far as I can tell, all of the bits on the left-hand side are irrelevant if you happen to be using the block editor. And I haven't actually tried using any of the other things on the right-hand side, but they're things you can turn off if you don't want the user to be able to edit that particular content. So if you're using metadata and nothing else, you don't have any content for your post, then you can actually turn off the content editor. Similarly for all the other different things there. And finally, the group settings section enables you to say whether or not this particular field group is active, and if the field group is available to requests coming in on the REST API. And there is a plugin which I'm going to talk about, which does require you to turn that on. Well, that's how it talks to ACF to find information about the fields it's going to display. So here we have the field, my text field, in which I've created content for the text field of field group 101 is the content that we're going to see on the front end. And I've got two different ways of displaying this inside my post. One, I can use a shortcode, which ACF provides, which is called ACF. And in that, I have to specify the name of the field, so I just call it text. And the other one is this plugin called Meta Field Block, which displays metadata. And it's available on WordPress.org. And this plugin has a block which is written in JavaScript, and therefore it's able to access ACF fields so long as they're available on the REST API, and does quite a good job of displaying all these different ACF fields. So that's what we see in the editor. The top part is me with a bit of colors, and the bottom bit is the post meta box called field group 101. When we get to the front end, you can see that the shortcode has expanded to the contents of the field, and so has the meta field block. And on the right-hand side, there's a reminder of what the editor was displaying. So we could see there were two columns with two headings and a shortcode block and a meta field block. If you use the meta field block, you can actually see the contents in real time inside the block editor. If you use the shortcode, you can view it or preview it. So that was a simple example of a text field. We don't need to cover any more yet. Now, what ACF has provided recently is the ability to define your own custom post types. One of the things that people might want to create is a custom post type for testimonials, where someone can write something nice about you and you might want to publish their name and a picture of them and some other things. So you can create a special content, post content type called testimonial, in which you put this stuff. And ACF provides a user interface to do that. Ditto, ACF provides a user interface for you to define taxonomies. So we could have a special type of taxonomy called testimonial types, which is associated with testimonials, where you could say the testimonial is about, I've had some examples down. If it was check a trade, it would be value for money, responsiveness, tidiness, and other different things I can't think of. And so for testimonials, it could be to do with value for money, or it could be to do with how happy you are, or the quality of service you provide, that sort of thing. So given that you can create post types and taxonomies and fields, what sort of fields can we actually create? And there are quite a few that ACF provides out of the box. The first 6 are basic fields. Text we've seen. Text area is an extendable one. Number for typing in numbers. Range for choosing on the slider. Email addresses, URLs, and you can even have password, though I don't know why you'd ever want to display a password to somebody, because it sounds a bit insecure. And then content fields, image, in other words, picture, file, which could be MP3 or video or something, WYSIWYG editor, which is just a cut down of the original classic editor for the content, embed, which is the same as any embed block or similar to, so it's just a URL which would cause something to be embedded from another site. And then for the Advanced Contents Field Pro, there's a gallery block, which is multiple images all put together. Oh, sorry, gallery field type, multiple images put together. And so on. So there's 6 different choice fields. And then we have relational fields, which are relationships between one bit of content and another. So a link is simply a link to a post or page or something. Post object is very similar to a link, and a page link is very similar to a link, and a relationship is also similar to a link. It's just the way that it provides a user interface for you, the user, to decide when you're editing how to select the information that you want to point someone to create another link. But it's not the first 4 are links to different types of post content, custom post types, and the taxonomy is to identify links to different taxonomies. So in the same way as you look at a post and it says this is published under poems, that you could associate it, taxonomy, to a particular field, and then they'll get a link to all the different poems in that taxonomy. And finally, the relational one is to a user. So it's not necessarily the person who's the author of the post, but it could be a user of the system. In the advanced section, we have a Google map, and then 4 different types of picker: date picker, date time picker, and color picker. And these are advanced simply because they require a bit of JavaScript in the message, in the meta box. ACF provides fairly nice tools to enable you to arrange the way these fields are presented to the user inside the editor. So we can produce a message to tell people what to do, and then we can structure other fields using accordions and tabs. And I might give you a demo of that at some point. And then we also have a field group gun, which enables you to group multiple fields, and you can then clone these fields. You've got the Advanced Custom Fields Pro, or you can otherwise arrange them. But it's multiple fields. An Advanced Custom Fields Pro provides clone, flexible content, and repeater, and we'll come on to that in a moment. Right, I'm going to start up a browser if I can. I'm going to browse. Let's try this one. Is that big enough, or do I need to make the fonts larger? A demo. Here's some field groups. Here's one called Testimonials, which contains all 35 different fields. And within here, we have what I started off as for testimonials, a very simple thing. Someone writes a testimonial, there'll be an author name. So I called it author name, and it got given a name of my testimonial's name and a no default value. And I haven't done anything special with regards to validation of the field. I haven't even said it's required, nor have I done anything on presentation, or I could write some instructions, nor have I done anything on conditional logic. So it's all basic stuff. And we have author image, which is obviously an image, a picture. And this is the list of the different field types I can choose from using ACF PRO. And the author image has a number of different ways it can be returned to the programmer so that they can then decide how to display the content to the user. One is an array, another one is just the URL, and the other one is the image ID. And if you just provide the URL, it's not very helpful if you want to have information about the image displayed, like the title of the image or the other content. So there's the first two fields I started off with. Then I started defining each of the different types of field as I was investigating what they all did. So if I get down to group somewhere, we might have an understanding of what group was. So a group field is basically a group of fields. So we can refer to this field called group, and we would expect it to be able to display both the group text field and the nested group field, which is more fields, and this nested group contains an image. So if I was to display this field called group, then I would hope it would make use of these fields somehow. If we go to a testimonial, which I can edit, we can see each of these different fields here. So there is my name. I wrote the testimonial. This is the default contents. It's a text area field. You could fill something in here. I don't know how people are able to do demos and type correctly without doing any typos. I can't do it. And here we have a field which contains a number. Now I'm going to type in the magic number 42. Having done that, it's now enabled there's two other fields, email and password, to appear. I don't like the idea of having this email and password appearing automatically. Therefore, I've decided I would only enable these things to appear when that field number was set to 42. Now that definition of that was done inside this field group. Back to testimonials. Go to email, conditional logic. I've turned it on and I said show this field if the number value is equal to 42. As you can see, the block editor or the editor knew about that field, but had logic to turn off the display of it when the number was other than 42. So it was there but hidden. That's a very simple example of using conditional logic to cause information to appear or not. And you can probably use checkboxes to do that sort of thing, and radio buttons to say, yeah, if you want to display this stuff, click on this radio button and lo and behold, the new fields appear. Right, back to the PowerPoint. Is that enough demo stuff? Right.
Were you going to show us about that group one?
I did. I think I did, didn't I? Here's a group, and this group consists of two fields, And then the second field is itself another group. And that consists of one field, which is a group image. So it's a structured field with more than one bit of data. And that's useful if you happen to say you're going to do your own Google map. You might need to know the address and the latitude and longitude, and you put that all inside the Google map field.
Okay, so it collects data together, basically.
Yeah. So let's go back to that testimonials. So this is the WYSIWYG field, just a standard plastic editor box, including any extensions that might be added in by a plugin. So this is a shortcode dialog added in by one of my own plugins to insert PayPal things in. This is the gallery field. Here's the different selection boxes. Here's the different relationship fields. So you can see the link just enables you to choose from this dialog. And the post object is a searchy type thing. And the relationship one enables you to specify what sort of custom post type or taxonomy it's associated with. You can end up getting exactly the same set of information, some of which these things are multiple choice and other ones are only one choice. And here's the different categories. Now these categories in this taxonomy are associated with my posts, which is here's the tab displayed as horizontal tabs, and I've only got one tab there and a couple of fields for date and time pickers. So that's a date and a time picker. And then there's a time picker. And then a color picker. And then we get down to the accordion, which is at the moment collapsed. Inside the accordion, I've got the group. And so I have the group text, which has got GT. And in the nested group is the image. And I'll choose picture of marmalade. Now I'll go away and come back to, how do I go away? Minimize that. There you go. Come back to this later. Well, the question is, if you're not a programmer, how do you display this content? Because it looks like it could get quite complicated. And the answer is, well, you've got a number of different choices. The first one is to use the ACF shortcode. Well, that's very limited because it only works for fields which have text-based, simple text-based values. And as you can see, I've only put those little square brackets into this thing here. So next I found something I wanted to use, the ability to put my metadata into blocks displaying the metadata, and the metafield block achieved that. And I didn't realize how great it was. It doesn't require ACF PRO. So I then checked what it could do, and it can display the basic fields, basic content, but not gallery because it doesn't handle ACF PRO, choice, relationship, and advanced, but not the Google map. And then it didn't display message accordion and tab, and there's a good reason for that. Then I had a look and I found another plugin called ACF Views, which provides a shortcode called ACF Views, and you generate a view of data. So it's the front-end view of the data that is stored in the different fields. And if you're just displaying fields, then you can quite easily just go and say, I want this, and I want this, and I want this, and it will generate some HTML for you, which it will then populate whenever you ask for that particular view to be displayed. but of course it's just views. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to be able to display any field inside a block, and I then decided I would therefore go away and write a plugin that will do that, and that plugin is now available on GitHub as ACF field block. What I haven't done is I haven't actually shown you how this is doing its stuff, but I will. Now that will display just about everything apart from message, accordion and tab, which don't really have, as ACF is concerned, a visual interface on the front end. They're there for the editor and not for the user. So it should be possible to achieve the same thing. So it simulates exactly what the user sees on the front in the editor. So let's go on and have a little look at the ACF Pro. And the first thing it provides is a flexible content field. And this is a field where you define a series of different layouts. And within those layouts, the different fields you want to display. And then the user in the editor can then choose which layouts to use out of these different layouts and structure and put them together in whichever order they like. Now, I haven't thought of a good use case for this, so I just demonstrated it with a very simple example. Therefore, I had a layout called Layout 1, and it contains a text field called Flexible Content Text. And inside the editor, I added Layout 1 and I added Layout 2. I had two different rows containing flexible content text, and I created the content of FCT1 and FCT2, and then in the front end, I was able to display it as FCT1 and FCT2. I'm sure lots of people can find very useful ways of displaying this stuff, but I haven't yet. Peter, any ideas? No. So there's a simple example. The repeater field is something where you can create multiple fields in the same way that, in a similar way to the layout. In the layout, when you added a row, you had to choose which type of layout you wanted. And the repeater, it's just the same group over again. But the repeater can actually have a nested group. So inside the ACF field group definition, I've defined the first repeater as containing a text, a number, and then a group, and a nested repeater. And we can see, the group consists of the nested repeater. Is that right? Inside the meta box, when we go and edited it, I first of all added a row and filled in these fields for the text, number, and the group. And this group was, only contained a group link. And then there was a nested repeater, which was another repeater field inside the repeater. So there's another add row button. There we can see I've added this checkbox 3 times. Don't know why you particularly want to do that, but I did, just to demonstrate it. And here we can see on the front end, I was able to produce some output showing a list of the different fields. And when the field was null, it didn't actually display anything. So here we can see no repeater group link, but here we can see the link. And this is a no value being displayed for the nested repeater checkbox inside a list of items. Does that make any sense? Good. And the clone field is where you can say, I've already defined a particular field and I want to use the same thing in this meta box as well, and it's you can either decide to have it operating seamlessly, which means your clone field doesn't appear as a field of its own right. It just merges the field straight into your field group, or you can have it displayed as separate thing. So that is display. Display groups selected fields in a group within this field. And then you can choose which fields to be displayed within the group just by choosing from this select box. So here we have my clone field. I cloned the group called Clone Me. And there are two fields, Clone Me Text and Clone Me Text 2. And if I was to display that group and I told it that it wasn't seamless, then it would display both of the fields, Clone Me Text and Clone Me 2. Now, here we've actually started giving an example of this ACF field block that I wrote in order to display the content. And the final thing that ACF Pro provides as an extra field is the gallery field, which is just like a gallery really, but the difference is this information is stored as metadata and not as part of your post content. Therefore, it can be used in multiple places, if you so wish, when you're displaying dynamic content. Now, how did I write this ACF field block? I used ACF Pro's ACF blocks logic. And this is basically similar to Gutenberg's, except in that you use block.json to define the block that you want to develop. But after that, it doesn't require you to write any JavaScript. In fact, you can't. But you do have to write the PHP that will display the data which your block is going to display. Now, somebody who's going to use it as a developer might just write a block which will display a testimonial, as we can see here, where the text has been written as one field and the writer of the testimonial is another, and her job title is displayed as another field, and that's all done within the block, and the user interface appears inside the block, but it isn't storing this information as metadata. What I wanted to do is I wanted to store the metadata and display it in certain places in certain forms. So I wanted to write a generic routine that would display any of my ACF fields inside a block. I just say what field I want and it would display it. And I can use that as dynamic stuff. And finally, ACF Pro provides the ability to have options pages. And this is where you can store information which can be used across the site. And an example of that is the Google Maps API key. And I should blur that out, shouldn't I? Because that's one of my Google Maps API keys.
Edit that piece out of the video.
I found out how WordPress SEO blurs some text in the non-premium version when you're using Wincher. Just a little bit of CSS. You go into the CSS, you can edit, you can turn it off.
Oh, really?
You can see what it's displaying. So when you're using ACF and you define these different fields, you can actually cause it to be synchronized between your development and your live site by having a folder called ACF JSON, and whenever you update something in your ACF thing, it exports this information to a JSON file inside your theme. So when you upload a new version of the theme, which most people will be developing a new version of the theme because they've created new field groups and fields and need to display these fields in different ways inside the theme, then the definition will get carried across and imported into the ACF on the production site, so long as you remember to include those files inside your theme. Why, the question everyone should ask is, how much does this cost? And at the moment, since whenever it was, 2020, it is something which you have to buy a yearly license for. But prior to that, when I bought it, I got an unlimited license, which I'm very pleased with because it only cost me $30. Now it's going to cost you $49 a year if you want to have one website supported. $149 if you're a freelancer and need to have 10 websites supported, and $100 more if you're an agency and you want unlimited. That's per year. So how are there extensions for ACF? Yes, there's lots, because ACF is the something's most downloaded plugin available. And there's a website called Awesome ACF, which lists over 170 third-party extensions for ACF. There's a plugin which would help you generate your theme code called ACF Theme Code. There's an ACF Blocks plugin which was written by Delicious Brains and somebody else, and unfortunately it isn't what I was looking for. I can't really recommend that one. There's ACF Extended, which I haven't looked at very much, but it provides 14 additional ACF fields over and above the ones we've listed there, and probably some of those in the list below are part of that. And somebody today said they use Elementor Pro, which enables them to display ACF fields inside their Elementor pages. And if you want to find other ACF plugins, just go and do a search on WordPress.org for ACF. And then there's other bits, the export and import, synchronized JSON I mentioned briefly, and then the front-end forms, which I haven't played with. So I'm going to go back to my browser now. And we'll go back and have a look at these different fields. So here's the flexible content field. And I'm going to add a row, and it says, what layout do you want? And I've only got one to choose from, so I choose layout 1, and there is my flexible content text. I'll add it again, choose layout 1, and then I've got another one. And I can probably swap these things around and delete them and duplicate them and do all sorts of stuff inside there. The repeater is similar. I've added a row, and I've got the default text here, and I can type in a number, and I can choose a link, and then I can have a nested repeater checkbox, and I can choose the different values in there, and then I can have another one, amber and green, and I can add a row of the repeater text 2, repeater number 8, and so on and so forth. And again, I can drag these things around. I need to reorganize them. And if I created something I didn't want, I can obviously delete it. And this is all pretty fancy stuff that ACF provides in the editor. When we actually display these things on the front end, it might not be fancy at all. Let's have a little look to see how we can display these things. This thing here is my ACF field block, and it's displaying a field called author name. So this is me in edit mode, and this is in preview mode, and this is taking the saved value, which is there. Now, if I was to change my name to Herb Miller -stupid, which is what my grandchildren know me as, you will see it doesn't actually change automatically, because it actually requires the data to be saved as post metadata before the block can access it. But now we should eventually get to see that. I think it's probably caching this information. So if I change that field to something else and then change it back again, author name, there you go, done. So this is me seeing it inside the block editor, and what we'd hope to see is that information displayed inside my post. Yeah. So theoretically, I should be able to add a new block and choose the flexible content block and see that. And there you go, I called it. Didn't actually give it any values. Or I could change it to the repeater block. And we can see my repeater block being displayed. Now I've chosen at this time not to put any labels on any different fields, which doesn't help very much when you're inside a repeater block. But it doesn't matter on this one here, because if I did want to put a label to say this is the author name, I could simply create a group and insert a field into the group. That didn't work, did it? I could put a label in like that. I could do the same for other different types of field. Duplicate. But it wouldn't work for repeaters. So I haven't defined an image for that. So very simple. This is displaying the image at the same size as the editor's been defined to display it. So this is just a preview size or thumbnail size. Right. So the reason I want to put this data in there is because I actually want to include that in dynamic content. So if I was to go to an all testimonials page, I'd like to see all my different testimonials. And here we can see these aren't really testimonials, it's just me trying to get this thing to work. So this post is called Retesting Name Attribute Problem, but the author of this one is called Fred. If I was to go and look at that specific one, here we can see that Fred is being displayed again as the author. And lo and behold, that's the value. So here we can see this is being displayed as a query block inside the block editor. So the structure of the query loop has a post template and a post template. The query loop itself says display posts which are of type testimonial in the newest, oldest form. The post template is how to display this field, so displaying the post title as a link and a post excerpt. And then there's a row which contains the paragraph and ACF field. That ACF field is my author name, and below there's the post date. Then I don't really need it, but there's some pagination as well. what happens is when the block is being displayed, it gets past the post ID of the particular post that's been rendered from the post template. And therefore, we don't need to, ACF can deal with that very nicely. Thank you very much. I've waffled on a bit too much there, I'm afraid. Let's get on to the questions that answers the people gave to my questions. So here's my answer. I've got lots of stuff which I need to change to ACF, that's what I said. And here's some other answers. Paul Tansom, unfortunately not here tonight, said he's interested in a searchable gallery where images can be categorized and displayed according to categories. He hasn't got a solution for that, and we haven't presented a solution, but I'm sure it's quite possible with ACF. Peter, I think, said yes, Elementor Pro. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Two other people said they use ACF as their solution for what they do. Someone who's not here wanted to see what Premium can do, and there was one other reply of no. And Julia Giles put Dot as her answer, which is, I think, quite a nice one. But she's not here either. So that's it on ACF and ACF Pro. And I'm sorry I waffled and got confused myself. Any questions? Why is there a fire burning on there?
It was in regards of what you are saying. So
Yes.
you should have picked it up in timer, really.
Anything else?
You know, this is a dependency. And if you somehow will lose this plugin, you will lose your fields in the front end, at least.
Or you lose them in the editor as well. They'll be, the data will still be there, but you won't have any way of changing them. Let me have a go at turning it off and let's see what happens.
I think there are other solutions, pods, I think, but these pods are sort of purely free plugin, and they had like a lot of problems with updates, something like this. So it's not very convenient to actually use a free plugin with such complexity. This is, I think, the key point of using something which is paid.
Well, you can use ACF without as the free plugin, and that's still extremely complicated. So, but you just won't have those extra capability of the blocks.
And I think there's also repeater is missing and something like this.
Sorry, the what?
A repeater is missing, I think.
Oh, yes,
in a free version.
The repeater is missing. If the repeater is important to you, then you have to go to that. Repeater was actually developed as a separate premium plugin until they merged them all together into one thing called ACF Pro, or until Elliot Condon merged it all together into ACF Pro. And I'm sure somebody else could go and try to write the repeater again, but what's the point is the answer. I suppose it's like, well, if you turn off ACF, you can't get, I can no longer get to my testimonials, can I? Hold on.
Once I used a free language, multi-language plugin, and turns out that it wasn't working with Gutenberg. It was just launched 5.0, and so it was no go. And I spent like a month making a glue to make it work with everything else. It was a disaster, real disaster.
Yes.
It was like in the final I realized this in a final moment when we are putting content. For example, my French version is going to be saved as English version, etc. So it was a disaster. This was a pre-plugin. So with such complexity, it's not a very convenient and safe way to use plugins without any paid version people are living on.
Yeah, but I think if you decide you're going to use ACF, then you've decided for the long term. And if you're going to change from using ACF, then you have to manage that yourself. What you hope is that the plugin doesn't ever go away.
Yeah.
That's true of my own code. So if I was to go away, which I plan to do in the future because I'm getting old and I want to stop doing some work, then should I offer people a website which contains my bespoke plugin, which has only been used by multiple people, or should I convert it to use ACF Pro, which can then be supported by a whole host of other developers?
It's a tough question, you know.
Herb, that's a question I've had to deal with because I wrote some software for another product, which I used a lot when I was working. And in the end, when I decided to retire, I just gave everyone who had bought the product the source code and said, I'm retiring. If you have any questions for the next year, please come to me. Otherwise, here's the source code. You can do with this what you like.
Yeah.
And I gave it to them, no limitations, nothing. And they all just said, thank you very much. We will use this and good luck with your retirement.
Well, that's what happens with my plugins is the source code is all available on GitHub and it can be forked from there. So long as I don't go and delete it, then they can continue to use it. Or
Microsoft doesn't
delete
you for inactivity.
Yeah, no problem. But they might find that they can't find anybody to maintain it because they themselves don't know how to use that code.
I think we have a group of developers from Germany. They are supporting plugins which were dropped from support from original developers. How they called themselves? Collective.
The plugin collective. Yeah, we had a talk about that, didn't we, a few years back? But they're only supporting a set of plugins that was written by one person. They're not taking on all of the plugins that are available on WordPress.org, or 60,000 of them.
Possibly someone can repeat their example and make something like this with other worth saving plugins.
Yeah, they might do. Anyway, here I am. I've turned off ACF, and now I've enabled another one of my plugins, which is called OIG Testimonials, which is what I started off in the first place before I converted it to may or may not work with ACF. And when ACF is not available, it then provides the field called author name. And as you can see, because I was using exactly the same field name, I can actually edit this field, Miller-stupid, and save it again as Herb Miller. But I'm not displaying that field, so I would have to actually display a field block which contains author name Herb Miller, because it's displaying all the fields within the field I supported in there. So if there's a piece of code which is very similar to it and can use that sort of stuff, lo and behold, you can use it, but it is going to break these particular blocks as well. Now it's broken inside the editor, but the front end won't care about it because it says I can't display that block. So it doesn't display anything for that block because it's just a comment as far as it's concerned, but it does display this label, which is a good argument for ensuring that the block displays the label so that when the block isn't available, you don't see the label either. Are there any more questions, Drew?
No, that was all that was in the chat.
Right. Well, let's go on and finish off the meeting then. It's by 8:30, see if we can do that. How do we do that? Go back to here. So as we normally do at the end of it, thank you very much to our sponsors for the WordPress community in general. Here we go. Thank you very much to our Meetup members. We've now got 521. Sometime between March and July, we managed to reach the 500 mark, or a more important number, the 512 mark. What you'll notice there is that the number of countries that support Meetups is reduced by 8 in the last couple of months. The number of groups has gone down. The number of members is reduced below 500,000. And Bournemouth and Bristol and Tunbridge Wells have disappeared as WordPress meetups because they didn't survive COVID. And they finally got zapped out of the system.
Foundation is paying for all these meetups groups, so they reduce these groups which are not active. They I was a part of this group which was making this work, and they are like advising people to keep up with these meetups and do everything which was possible to to support these people to try to reactivate these meetups. So at some point it was like a final line for all these dormant meetups.
Yeah, which is a shame because Bristol had 1,000 members.
All these people got notifications and warnings, etc. So that it will happen.
The Bristol organisers were sorry they did it, and it was also hard work for them to actually terminate their meetups because they had bank accounts to store the information, to store the figures from any sponsorship that came in, and so on and so forth, and other systems as well. Let's see if we can keep WordPress Pompey going for another few years.
Definitely.
This campaign about removing meetups is finished, so who is survived for now.
There we go. There's my little charts to show how we've done with attendees and planned attendees as opposed to real attendees, and number of members who joined. This is what's going on at the moment. Before the dotted line is the past, and we saw WordPress 6.3 release candidate 1 issued yesterday, or some people did. And would you believe it or not, sometime this week, WordPress 6.4 work starts even before WordPress 6.3 is released, which will be on the 8th of August, according to the current plan. Then a few days before the WordCamp US, there's a community summit where people are invited to go and talk all about WordPress and plan it. And in September, we're not having a WordCamp London anymore. There was a plan to have it around about February, March. Dan Maybe was trying to organise something. I think there were major problems with budget and the cost of conferences in London, and therefore he didn't get it sorted. We're looking forward to late autumn or mid-autumn, WordPress 6.4 being released. So you're keeping your websites busy over the summer, updating to WordPress 6.3, I imagine. I don't know what's in it, but there was a video made of it a couple of weeks ago, which you can find if you go and search for WordPress 6.3. That link at the bottom. What I do know is there are now 364 full site editing themes, and and with the different color variations, that gives you 971 plus 300, 1200 or so, 1300 or so different variations of full site editing themes just by downloading the theme from WordPress.org. But they're not very popular. There's only been a total number of downloads of all of the full site editing themes of less than 9 million, whereas it's 8.9 billion is the total number of downloads of plugins from WordPress.org. That's what we did this year so far. We didn't meet in April because I was on holiday, and we didn't meet in June because we couldn't quite get around to doing the learn.wordpress.org, and I wasn't ready for this advanced custom fields. And we hopefully might meet in August so that we can talk about WordPress multi-site. Who's a WordPress multi-site person? No? Well, maybe we won't talk about WordPress multi-site then. Has anyone?
I was wondering if we can like search and like discover new themes and like new ways to make a multi-site, even if you like don't have to. For example, you can have there's a slide, I think, theme which can provide you like slides for yourself, and there's this Google history, no, not a history, come on. Like in, come on, sorry, I forgot. So not exactly themes for like presenting your site, but for like special cases, like for example, for slides, or for, how it's called? It's plugin from Google.
Andrew's got it.
It's like about showing your history in social media or something.
Oh, is it? No, I don't know that one.
The same mechanic behind.
Oh.
Like you make funny images with some text on top of them.
Okay.
Fancy emojis or something. And you can like make show of them.
Is it?
I'm sorry, I forgot how it's called.
Right.
What do you have in your social media on your like account image? You can show like your history, not a history.
Archive.
That always, Olga, that always assumes you use social media.
Yes. Yes, I am not using these things. This is why I cannot recall how it's called.
No,
You mean timeline?
I don't use social media.
I'm using them, but not in advance. So the key point is that you can like make additions to your site with these like themes, and not to stick with like presenting the content in a usual way. I think we can like discover these possibilities. How it's called? I forgot.
So, as opposed to multi-site, you want to talk about different ways of displaying content so that it's non-WordPress like, but using WordPress.
This plugin's called Web Stories. My gosh.
Web Stories.
I have told you, it's history. Stories, history, it's the same thing.
I think that Andrew Leonard used Web Stories on EBPS.
I've used the WordPress plugin for Web Stories.
Where is it on here, Andrew? Am I still sharing?
Yes, you are.
But it's a thing for mobiles, isn't it? It creates a series of very limited web pages which are mobile shaped.
Yes, But you
Oh,
somehow
so-
can like use them on a multi-site and have like everything in one package. I don't know.
Did you not put it on here?
Maybe I didn't. I don't know.
I was wondering how like how you can like assemble everything and use all these possibilities.
That doesn't sound like web stories to me.
That's what you used, didn't you?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, but that's what it does. It creates these.
So how you're actually using them?
It just creates displays that are sort of mobile friendly, like this.
So
And
that
when
is
you are
from
putting them
Instagram.
there,
Instagram uses this thing called stories. So you can post images and text to Instagram, but you can turn them into stories. And on Instagram, they hang around for about 24 hours. But people engage with stories on Instagram more than they do with posts. So it's interesting that somebody's trying to make your site look like stories, and therefore you might get people engaging with it more. I'll have to load it on and see what it's like.
so we need to learn how to combine the whole thing, I think.
I did some story stuff for somebody. Let's see if I can find it. So would you therefore use web stories on a separate subdomain of your website and display that completely separately from the website and do that in a multi-site environment?
I was thinking that this is possible and you can combine them somehow.
Mm. Well, you
This
can
is
actually have,
why I was raising this question in the first place.
yeah, you can have both normal website and web stories in the same website. The multi-site would be a better way of separating it, wouldn't it?
This is what I want to explore.
Mm.
And there is also a theme, I think, from Automatic, I think, to make slides.
Yes, I've seen one to do presentations because
But if you want to look at it, it's ebps.org.uk/BPS.
/BPS.
BPS. Yeah. So this is what, and then you can just, so it's just designed to basically to see things on a mobile if you want to. I mean, I took it literally. This is a story of the BPS.
It look good.
But it's just a plugin. It's written.
Yeah.
It's written by Google, I think.
Yeah, by Google, but I was wondering how like you can combine everything and make it like new experience.
I don't know. Go and open your phone up to that URL and off you go. See what it's like. How do I do this chat thing? Right, let's see if we can go back to this. That's a good idea. Right, here we go. So if that's not part of WordPress Multi-Site 101, then we could have another in October. We could have 5-minute show and tells on things I like web stories and whatever else I can think of. But in September, we're hoping to have Abba and Courtney and come to tell us all about learn.wordpress.org and what you can learn from by looking at learn.wordpress. Anyway, last but one. WordPress 6.2 has been downloaded 97 million times. Gutenberg's gone up to version 16.2.1. There's 60,409 plugins, which is fewer than last month. 11,062 themes, of which 300 and something of them are full site editing. And I've just tried to submit my plugin to WordPress.org and to be told there's 824 plugins which are awaiting review, and that's going to take 64 days even before the before it gets looked at for the first review. So if you want my plugin that does ACF fields, you're going to have to either wait 64 days or download it from my website or go and get it from GitHub.
That shows how many plugins have been submitted then, doesn't it?
Yes, well, yes, and the fact that whatever her name is has
Mika,
stopped doing who?
Mika or Micah, I have no idea.
Yeah, she stopped reviewing plugins and therefore there's an enormous backlog, I suppose. People haven't been trained. There you go. What do we depend on in WordPress? We don't know, but when something happens, we don't know who's going to fix it. I suppose everyone in Slack gets excited. 8.92 billion plugin downloads. So when's it going to be that we get to 9 billion? 30 years before the population gets to 9 billion. Right. Thank you once again to our sponsors, Red IT and 34SP. And that's it. So I'm going to stop recording if I can find the button. Stop share.